Hello, everyone. I am Vern Cooper.
And I'm Ebony Williams, and we interrupt this program.
We interrupt this program to continue to talk about our favorite TV show ever, The Last of Us, Season 2,
The
airing
Last of
now.
Us.
Yeah. Episode 3.
The
So,
Path.
The Path, yeah. I've been thinking a lot about the title. Like, how do you create that little capsule, that piece of information that gives the viewer any kind of guidepost along watching this thing? And so they chose
Hmm.
The Path. It's literal in some ways because they're going to set out. Ellie and Dina actually they start a journey, but it's also a metaphor
Hmm.
in that when we're taking actions, each action leads to a next opportunity to make a decision. So I have been trying to engage with online content. I've been trying
Hmm.
to be in places where other fans, other appreciators of the show are. There aren't a lot of appreciators right now. For some reason, a lot of people are watching the show just so they can hate it. There's some people who
Really?
hate watching the show. Yeah, they're review bombing Rotten Tomatoes, which isn't actually review bombing is not like a real metric of any show because it's people. Some of them haven't even seen it. They're just on there to hate about it. But there's a lot of negative reactions to the show right now to do with casting decisions, to do with like whether they're following the game story or not. And there's some outright just like real nasty misogyny and transphobia being directed towards some of these actors.
Yeah.
At first, I was like, well, I don't want to be in this place anymore. But then it kind of made me think again about interrupting the program,
Mm-hmm.
how to like create a rupture. Like you want me to feel this way. You want me to feel like this isn't for me because of this identity I have. And yet the identity I have is represented in the game. There's
Yeah.
a trans character in the game. So
I don't understand this world, man. Like, I just don't get it. You got time to watch a show just to hate it?
it shouldn't be me, man. Whatever spare time I have, I'm going to use that for something that brings me joy.
Bring me joy. Tomorrow is not promised,
No.
you know?
yeah.
But I'm going to spend an hour hating on something,
And
you
whatever
know?
time after that, engaging in discourse online. I only bring that up because I feel like since we started or restarted doing this podcast, we haven't actually talked about why we chose the title "We Interrupt
Mm.
This Program." Like, what is the importance of like interrupting? There's a lot of knowledge and information out there, and all of it is transmitted through media. Even when we go back to the basics of learning how to like think about ourselves, it's stories, hearing the things our parents or our peers say. We never grow out of that learning model. The importance for interrupting is to make sure that nobody's going to look out for you. Nobody is thinking about making sure that you as a person feel like you have the right to engage with these media.
Hmm. It's real funny that you say that. Because I don't mean to segue into the show, but doesn't this kind of sound like the speech what's his name gave about
Yes.
community?
yeah, Seth.
You know,
And
what do we call those people? We call them strangers. Was that Ellie? That was Ellie.
well, Seth, they actually had very similar rhetorics, and I while I was watching that, I was taking notes about each of their rhetorics.
Mm-hmm.
Because if stories and media, this is how we narrate who we are as a society. This is how we tell the story of ourselves to ourselves. And as we know, not everybody is always included in those stories. And I'm not saying every single story has to include every single identity,
Sure.
but everybody should feel invited to engage. And I guess my question to you is, do you still feel like this show is for everybody?
Huh. So interesting that you asked that question. I don't know that it's for everybody, but it's for me.
It's
Like it speaks to me. Even me and you texting during the show, like you and I both had very similar thoughts about grief, looking at Ellie walking into that house, remembering what it's like to walk into a room when the person that was there is no longer there, and feeling that grief. So I feel like the show is for me. I see myself represented in the leadership. Maria, I was so pleasantly surprised to see the other black woman. Like, of course, there are more than one black. Hopefully, there's more than one black person in
yeah.
Jackson Hole. Another one. Okay.
Well, then they made that joke about Ellie too. Dina made that joke
Oh
about
yeah, yeah,
Ellie.
yeah.
Like, that's the other one.
Yeah.
That is a tiny detail that speaks to people who are not accustomed to being able to expect finding people who look like them
Mhm.
in every room. When you can't represent every single identity, you can at least name pieces of that experience. Even though a show can't always do that, its job is not to, I don't think, represent everyone because it just wouldn't be able to do that. I think the mark of inclusive world building is that it should be accessible to everyone, that
Mhm.
everyone should be able to envision themselves there in some way. Because watching media is participating.
Mhm.
Even us texting back and forth while we're watching it, that's participatory.
One of the things it made me think of is that though we can represent pieces of people, also it's important to have various ideas around that writing table
Mm,
because, like you said, we don't know what we don't know. So if I'm writing about somebody's experience and all I have is my limited understanding, I'm missing a whole thing that might be there about somebody's worldview because I am coming at this from my perspective of something that's different from my experience.
right. And so the danger is getting it wrong. And I've always wanted to see a trans person represented in the apocalypse because of the particular things that a person who is on hormone replacement therapy would have to deal with in the apocalypse. For me, without my hormones, survival in is was going to look a lot different.
So seeing the other black woman and she had braids.
Mhm.
I had wondered this, but I don't think I've ever said it. But is somebody, as they're going on their supply runs, going to beauty supply stores?
I made that joke. I made that joke. I was watching my friend play the game, and Abby in the game has that, and just in the like in the TV show, she's got that high French braid,
Uh,
and I was like, "Who's braiding her hair?" And I was like, "Oh, she is traveling with a black girl. She's got."
like, is somebody going to the beauty supply? I'm sure somebody is.
And in the absence of that, or when it runs out, what's next? Because it's not just vanity, right? It
Mm-hmm.
is hygiene.
Mm-hmm.
And we explore basic needs through whiteness so often
Mm-hmm.
and through cisness and straightness so often that we overlook the fact that hair care or things like that is more than vanity. It's wellness. And also there's nothing wrong with vanity.
No, there's not. But I would love to see them explore that a little. Like, and that is a question I've had since season one.
Well, we've got a therapist. We know there's a tattoo artist somewhere.
They answered something that I asked you when we were talking about this. Because I was talking about how I hope that Gail is not the only therapist for the whole town because
Mhm.
she's gonna need a therapist.
Yeah.
And then they addressed that last night and she was like, "Oh, I'm an alcoholic."
Yes. So I mean
Yeah.
we should be worried about Gail.
We should be worried about Gail.
Well, let's get into a little chronology first because
Okay.
we really messed up on that last time. We were feeling so much, we just kind of went into it. But so there's a lot of storytelling through cinematography
Mm-hmm.
and editing and like a lot of technical details
Mm-hmm.
show us what this episode is about. So we
Mm-hmm.
open up on Joel's little hand, right,
Yeah.
with his watch, and that was upsetting to me. I mean, just first of all, the broken watch, and it's very
Mm-hmm.
iconic. We instantly recognize it.
Yeah.
Pedro Pascal's not even in that scene, but in
No.
my head, under that blanket, is Pedro Pascal.
Yes. I thought for sure they were gonna show him. So I know that I always refer to past iterations of us talking about this show. There was one thing that we've talked about using objects to ground the story. And I think that they beautifully did that. Another thing that I saw was the boots. Joel's boots were peeking out from under the sheet, and it reminded me of that moment when Joel came to Jackson Hole for the first time, and Tommy gave him the new pair of boots. And then also just this beautiful moment of like Joel was always the one that took care of Tommy. Now that he's gone, Tommy is bathing or preparing his body for burial.
Mhm.
which signals that changing of the guard, that Tommy growing up.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
grief can grow you up. Losing a parent felt untethered in a lot of ways. Like, I always knew I had a secure base I could go back to. Now that base isn't there anymore. I don't mean to say that I don't have family. I have family, but I only had one mom.
Absent presence. Yeah. No one stops existing.
Hmm.
Yeah, people die, and their existence just changes. That's just
Hmm.
another point in the path along their existence.
Thinking about this absent presence, you messaged me today and asked me if I noticed Ellie walking alone.
Yeah.
And I wondered, the showrunners, they had nothing, they've been intentional about everything. So they knew that after Joel, that this was what it was gonna look like.
Yeah.
That kind of represents their absent presence as well, because we have been so conditioned to seeing it one way.
Yes, Joel was something we thought we could always depend on. Whoever in this experiencing this world, it be a video game or whatever, Joel was a constant. It felt like he was
Hmm.
always going to be there. And so we see Tommy washing the body. He says, "Give Sarah my love." And Tommy has lost both now. I mean, in this unconventional family, in a way, unconventional in the cultural imaginary. There are a lot of families that look like this.
Hmm.
As Tommy is sitting there washing his arm, the camera pulls out. We see table upon table of
Yeah,
other people. And so the show is like, remember that it's not just
yeah,
Joel.
yes,
A lot of
we.
people died.
Yeah, and that scene when they're talking about what to do, they bring that up. We have lost. It also looked like to me that the person who was handling Joel was emotional. And I thought it was just about Joel because you know the way the scene starts off. We know who she's working on, but thinking about everything that that town just went through. Like, can you imagine taking care of community member after community member, and then here's another one.
Right, right. That's such a good
Like,
point. The reframe on
mm,
that character's experience after they've left,
mm-hmm,
because we see the rest of the room and then we go outside and it's just carnage and people injured and a triage, right? And a hallway of folks trying to be like, okay, here's something to keep you alive for now.
mm-hmm,
Okay, this one is like at death's door. We got to do this. And next we see Ellie, who wakes up, and Bella Ramsey's change in appearance is gone from I'm all put together, I'm badass, I'm in control, and they are lying there halfway clothed with their hair kind of like everywhere. Did you notice like that when Ellie wakes up, her eyes are crossed? She couldn't focus because
oh,
she was like out of it. So I was like, Bella Ramsey just crossed their eyes. As part of the performance of this. That's such a interesting detail.
right. But like, that's just a testament to the actor,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like, down to the detail. Like, and it goes back to what we've been talking about.
Mhm.
But I think a lot of times we talked about it with Pedro, just like
Mm.
how Pedro was just able to use his face to communicate what he was feeling. We could see that moment when he realized Sarah was dead. And this show is for me because I'm excited about it. I appreciate the art. I appreciate the detail that everybody puts into it.
And then it's suddenly 3 months later, and
Hmm.
Jackson Hole is attempting to rebuild. There's a shot of Tommy who suddenly looking a lot older,
Mm.
attempting to hammer some heavy thing in, and he's not making progress. And Jesse comes and takes it from him and just like knocks it down. And so now we see that Tommy is not only like physically, he's not only like maturing as a
Hmm.
leader of Jackson Hole, he's also aging. He's
Mm.
moving into that alpha space.
Right.
Uh,
Also, like, just thinking about, I think one of the visual representations for that is the weight of that kind of leadership. Like President Obama, from when he was Senator Obama, just like looking at the gray hair, and some of that can be age. But then also, I wonder how much of that was the weight of the job.
I saw him recently at like a Kennedy Center thing, and I was like, well, he's an old man now, still looking great, but like
Yeah.
markedly different. And I think aging in the public eye is different anyway, but
Yeah.
there is that like all that stuff ages you. Actually, this is actually a pivotal episode in like the course of the season because the main traumatic incident has happened. So everything that happens from now on, this is why it's called the path, right? This is how we're
Mm.
gonna make our way through the story. I can think of something that was introduced that I don't think we've seen before yet in the show, and that is deception. It's lying, it's
Oh yeah.
inauthenticity. One of the like the character I think who helps us see that the most is Gail. She is privy to all the secret knowledge of people,
Mm.
and she knows when people are fucking lying.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
she is useful in helping us understand when that is the case. Because in season one, nobody ever told a lie.
I was kind of put off by Gail saying it. And I don't know. I don't think I really sat with why that put me off because she's the first person who said it. Like, we've talked about how childish Ellie can be. We talked about how stupid, like, how not stupid, impulsive, childish,
Immature.
immature, all of those
Yeah.
things, but we haven't called her a liar yet.
I don't know if she's been one yet. And that's the thing is like, because when Gail was talking, I was like, you don't know what you're talking about. I was
Yeah,
disagreeing with her. But at
yeah,
the same time, she is correct in the one sense, though, that Ellie was lying.
yeah, she was.
I think
Yeah.
there were two. I think that scene with between Tommy and Gail was interesting because I'm not sure I believed either of them fully. Because maybe not Tommy in that scene, but Tommy later when he tells Dina that Joel wouldn't actually do what Ellie's doing when Ellie decides to go out and try to get revenge. Tommy said, no, he would do it if he thought he could save me, but he wouldn't do it for revenge. I don't know if I believe that Joel would not seek revenge. Is Tommy doing that retcon thing where you change your memory of the person now that they're dead?
Oh my goodness. Oh, oh
Because
goodness gracious.
we experienced that with my brother. Like my mother, when she talks about my brother, that she is not talking about the one I knew. Part of that is kids that aren't always honest with their parents about the stuff they get up to. But I was
Mhm.
like, that is not how that went. It's easier for you to remember a version of the person that was less difficult, that was less challenging.
Yeah. Or I think another part of it is the guilt, survivor's remorse.
Uh-huh.
I think I remember things differently because I am sometimes chastising myself for not seeing what was in front of me, just in terms of my mom's health deteriorating. So I might have a different history of how things actually went
Yeah.
because when I'm looking at it from the space of I know what's coming up and I didn't know what was coming up then.
That's yeah, so you've got the hindsight thing, and
Yeah.
then also we only have our own view of things. But I don't want to say he didn't know Joel very well, but his understanding of the things Joel did could have been different because they would have been filtered through his own values and his own motivations, and
Yeah.
they had different motivations or priorities, I guess.
Took that scene differently. I think I took Tommy's word for it.
That Joel really wouldn't have.
Yeah, and I haven't really interrogated that piece either about
Hmm.
if I think he would have or not. I mean, because when I heard it, I was like, I know for a fact Joel would have like. I mean, we see him do it.
We have seen
Made
him do
his,
it.
made his way across the country in an impossible situation to find Tommy. Like we had seen it. We have seen him go up against 20 men, armed men,
Yeah.
for Ellie. Like we've seen the things he's capable of. I don't know if they were already dead, if he would not seek revenge. I don't know.
It is something that we haven't seen that before. So we do have the benefit of just taking Tommy's word for it. And
Hmm.
that goes back to trusting the storytellers. I don't know what was going on with my head. I just felt so suspicious of everything
Hmm.
everybody said.
Yeah.
And part of it was because so many of them were lying.
Yeah.
And the world just feels wrong on its head without, the things that we were thought we were going to be able to depend on. And then Dina shows up. So Dina tells Ellie that she knows their names and where they're going. And the decision is made for Ellie to put it to a vote for the council.
Hmm.
Do you think that she actually thought that they would vote yes?
Oh yeah,
You thought
I
they
think
she
so.
thought they was going to be like, yeah, let's get.
Yeah, so I also felt like, though, thinking about this deception, I wondered if Tommy voted no.
I'm dying to know.
That was what I was wondering. I just kind of felt that in my gut, like that Tommy voted no. I wonder if we ever find out.
I have no idea. It would be really cool if we did, but only if it serves some more character development.
Yeah.
But I am still like endlessly curious. And the actors don't know because in the post credit, in the making of thing, the actor that plays Maria, I don't remember her name.
Regina Wesley.
She was talking about that because there's that scene where Ellie turns to appeal directly to Maria. She
Hmm.
says something you used to give, which is justice. And I was like, ooh, what's going on here? And Maria used to be a prosecutor
Oh yeah.
in the real world, which I forgot about. She was talking in the interview like she couldn't decide if her character voted yes or no.
Yeah. Huh.
But
Huh. That's so interesting.
yeah, I mean, think about it
So
because they didn't actually say it out loud, so it's not in the
yeah.
script, so they don't know.
Oh my goodness. I didn't watch that part. That's so interesting. I bet it'll come back up.
I hope so.
I bet it'll come back up.
But yeah,
And Tommy voted no. I'm just gonna go ahead and be the one. I'm gonna hold your hand when I say this.
well, he needs to protect Ellie now. He knows
Yeah.
that he's the one that's gotta. And even Gail says, like, I know you inherited her, which is just a messed up way to talk about a human, but also really, really true. Like that is kind of true to how that went.
You said something to me the other day about Ellie not fully being human. And I have never looked at Ellie that way before. The way Gail, maybe this is what's making me uncomfortable about how Gail talks about Ellie.
Hmm.
Because Gail said something to the effect of what Ellie is bringing with her, she had it before Joel.
Yeah, yeah.
And, it's for me, it goes past, growing up in the federal orphanage or it goes past that to being part cordyceps.
Yes. In Ellie's case specifically, she was born infected. She wasn't born. They keep talking about this as an immunity or whatever. It's like, and the immunity is a side effect. She was born infected, and we keep forgetting about that piece of it, I guess. But the way Gail, like, she was not simply talking about Ellie though. She was speaking really broadly and generally. She was like,
Mm,
yeah, nurture is only, what'd she say, 10%?
yeah,
And I was like, can we fact check this bitch? Because like,
right.
not you don't really think it's important whether she's right or wrong. I wonder what her motivations for saying that is. Like, why is
I
she
mean,
talking to Tommy like this?
I think she's angry. I don't know, maybe she's not. Excuse me, the human development researcher in me, I think, also tuned that out.
Yeah.
Because, we talk about the bidirectional relationship, it's
Yeah.
genetics and environment. And there's always that argument about nature versus nurture. But if we're looking developmentally, we're looking at that bidirectional relationship. So, yeah. So I like
I
on
was thinking about you. Yeah. While she was talking, I was like, I know Ebony hates it.
like I'm trying to enjoy the show, so I'm just gonna tune this part out.
Well, she
No, but
said, go ahead.
oh no, I was just gonna say I caught it though. I heard it. I think I didn't put any stock in it for whatever reason. Maybe I need to do better about interrogating. But I feel a certain, you know what I'm saying? Like she rubbed me the wrong way, and then there was a point I'm just like, yeah.
Well, she said, not everybody can be saved.
Mm-hmm.
Which, again, I don't care whether she's right or wrong about that. Why is she saying it to Tommy about Ellie? I'm less interested in fact checking her than I am understanding her motivations.
Mm-hmm.
Because more than any other character, Gail is a device. She
Mm-hmm.
is there specifically as to serve like a purpose for the audience, for our
Mm-hmm.
interpretation, our intervention into this world. And so that's, I think, why I'm suspicious of her because I
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, what are your motivations? What are you trying to get me to pay attention to? What are you trying to get me to think? And also, I think if a person had said that to me, I would have follow up questions. Like if in real life I was talking to a psychotherapist, if they, whether they were shit faced or not, and they said something like that to me, I would be like, but that may be true. Maybe none of us can be saved, but what do you mean by that to me right now?
Yeah.
What do you want me to feel by telling me that?
Well, and maybe the other piece of that is at this point in the story, we have been through so much grief, right? At what point do I just stop sugarcoating everything and just be honest?
That is kind of refreshing.
We are in the middle of a big tragedy. We're living, after this whole big thing. And not only that, lost some community members.
Hmm.
Like, there is trauma upon trauma upon trauma that we're dealing with here. Then she lost her husband. All these different losses.
It brought me back to the refrain of the first season was you keep going for other people.
Mm.
And I think that's something that's a big piece of this unease we're feeling here is that, like, what do you do when you've lost everybody? If your whole reason for continuing to keep going is other people, what happens when you lose them? Because sometimes you do.
Yeah, so you and I both, in our own way, are creatives. Like, just in terms of music, you do music. I've been like writing more lately, and I used to be a poet. I love poetry. Used to write. Do I not seem like a poet to
No,
you?
I like to hear that people like to be poets. I don't know. There's not enough of them.
So, what if I keep my poem to myself? Well, just like Maya Angelou's work shaped me, just like Shakespeare's work shaped her, if I don't share this thing that I have with somebody, then I might be stopping something that can change the world or change somebody else or make a difference in somebody else's life. And speaking of Maya, I think April 16th was a semicolon day. And when I think about semicolon day, I think about Maya Angelou, and she had this master class. She said it more eloquently than I'm about to say it. Um, and she talks about how the 40s were just chef's kiss, but the 50s were no, the 60s. When I turned 60, so just talking about these different stages in life. And then, as I think about this, I wonder if things kept getting better because she expected them to, you know?
Mhm. Yeah. Okay.
So as I think about all of those things about keeping going, there's also keeping going for other people. I might not know you, but I don't know how one day during the apocalypse you might pick up a book that I just happen to self publish and it might change your life,
And that's also, I think that goes, that path thing. If you stop going, then you have stopped living entirely.
Mhm.
And I think the show is like, we got to be clear about this. There is no stopping without dying.
Mhm.
I think a big piece too of this whole narrative, this whole world is agency, like being your own engine.
Mhm.
We still all only have to work with the things that are available to us.
Mhm.
And that's always, I think, going to be true. But intrinsic motivation,
Mhm.
that is as good as gold. I don't know that there is a more valuable thing to have and to be able to be someone who is motivated and excited by doing things.
I think that that's the key piece. Intrinsic. Joel, was his motivation ever really intrinsic?
Who's dead inside. I mean, he was a broken person. And I had this thought, is Joel even a good role model? I don't think he was a bad role model. I think Ellie
Mhm.
learned a lot of really important things from Joel. But Joel is not the kind of role model that Ellie needs now. Because Joel never dealt with trauma in a way that kept himself safe.
Mhm.
It's sort of like his path was put one foot in front of the other and look for the next thing to
Yeah.
kill, look to the next thing to punish.
Yeah.
And so when Gail said that Ellie and Joel, that they were
Yeah.
already the same before they met, like like Ellie is primed to go about navigating this trauma and grief and things in the way that Joel did, which ultimately led to him to where he was.
So I just had a thought. I've been thinking about this and I haven't really formulated how I think about this. Okay. So bear with me. I'm gonna get there. So on the tombstone, it says, uh, some brother and loving father, whatever it says.
Hmm.
And it occurred to me that he was Ellie's father. Like,
Yeah.
we're not talking about Sarah here, we're talking about Ellie. The people in the community, nobody knew him as a father. I mean, nobody knew him as a father to Sarah. They knew him as a father to Ellie.
Yeah. Right.
So then when we meet this group of traveling people, and they're being led by a man traveling with a young girl.
Yes. The
And
doubling.
yes. So thinking about the path, when Ellie sees the child beside the man, I wonder if she thinks that that could have been her and Joel, or if she wasn't with Joel, that could have been her.
And that's also, this is a good moment to go back to Dina for a minute too, because Dina is also traumatized and she voices this, but it's not just that she says it, we can also see it. In that scene, she reacts so strongly to
Mm-hmm.
seeing those people. And she's probably never seen a death like that before, but she has seen dead people. She's killed people. So her reaction to that, she's trying to run from it. And I think she's enabling Ellie, not maliciously, but she's enabling Ellie in part because it helps her feel better too.
She's pregnant. That's why she threw up.
Oh shit. Did not
That's why she threw
even.
up. I don't know if that's in a video game.
Man, I don't know either. I don't. I'm sure I'll find out. I'm playing with my friends, but I'm not going to tell you the stuff I find out because it's not relevant anyway because they're changing so much of it.
Okay. There is only so much of infected that can bring us drama. The drama is going to come from the human interaction. That's what they did in the first season. And that's what they're doing in the second season as well. Like, there were episodes where we didn't see infected in action.
Hmm.
Like, and to this episode, we didn't see any infected in action.
Right. Yeah.
Drama in the game comes from, well, there's drama that comes from the human interaction, but I think drama that sustains the game is what comes from the infected.
And to go back to the fact that this is media we're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
media is interactive. It transmits. So a game is a kind of media that requires physical input from us, that we actually get to participate in that way. But television as media, we have to engage with it differently. And it needs to push different buttons in us to compel us.
Mm-hmm.
The way Ellie is positioned now is different. She would often be either just to the rear or the side of Joel. She's riding on the front of that horse now. She's got Dina
Yeah,
behind her. And
yeah.
she is not ready. I am so scared for Dina. I'm so scared for the both of them because they don't have the skills to be doing what they're doing.
You said something earlier about Ellie being born infected. We know, like, the cordyceps die. I wonder if the infection keeps Ellie alive just like it would any other human being that's been infected.
You mean, does it enhance her in some way?
Yeah.
I don't know how much the infection has to do with like their physical capabilities, but they move differently. They run fast as hell. They do things that a person is not physically capable of doing. And it could be that they don't have the fear of self injury the way that we do. And that's also kind of a thing Ellie has, right? Like she
Yeah.
goes around the world like she's invincible.
If the cordyceps can evolve, or if the infected can evolve, Ellie can too. So while we think
I
that she's not ready, she can prove us wrong.
And what is she going to become, even? Because she's already not fully human, or she's a hybrid, right? She's a liminal being. And Ellie
Yeah.
is a liminal being in a lot of ways, right? She's a queer person. That's a liminality. She's an orphaned person. That's a liminality. She has these experiences both inside and outside of Fedra and the Fireflies. And then she's literally a biological hybrid. I love characters like that. I love the capabilities that like liminal characters have, but those capabilities with fear for what could happen to them. Because if the infection evolves, what's to stop Ellie just from becoming a stalker?
Are they called stalkers here?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It's like, are you confusing this with another show?
No. It's possible, but I've
No, I
watched a
do.
lot of zombie movies. And they all call them. Which one is this one?
I know, right?
No, there's runners,
Mm.
clickers, bloaters, and
Oh,
stalkers.
oh, okay, okay.
So the stalkers are the smart ones,
Mm,
which we've only seen the one of.
okay.
But what are they? Maybe they were Ellie's at some point.
Oh, goodness. Or it takes me back to episode one, season one, how the cordyceps became a thing anyway. Evolution.
Yeah.
It would just make sense that they would evolve to protect themselves. Or, oh, oh, oh no. I'm gonna turn up the human development part right now. Like I was trying to think about evolution and the cordyceps. I'm not gonna think about that right now. I'll think about that later.
I want to hear more about it though if you want to talk next time.
Yeah, man, give me some time to think about it.
There's still a lot of other themes of change and growth and whatever new ways of learning to explore. I want to go back to this thing that you were talking about with doubling, like
Mhm,
us or seeing iterations over and over again. So like the
mhm,
father and daughter leading this religious sect, and then just seeing another way of surviving in
mhm,
the apocalypse was cool too. And I wanna know how they did it. Like, what were they doing? Like,
mhm,
what was this prophet telling them? What knowledge were they getting that helped them survive? Because whether a person is religious or not, like, we can't discount the fact that a lot of the knowledge that we have that's encoded in mythology is to do with just staying alive.
mhm,
Like, there's a reason most of the Torah is about food storage.
mhm.
Whatever knowledge it was that they were working with had to have been helping them in some way. I'm interested in
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. I'm interested to see who and why would kill them. There's so much. We are only at the beginning of the stories that are going to be told this season.
That's right. Like, I was like, who the fuck are the wolves? And what are they doing? We did see Manny, so we know that Abby, at least, or her crew, has made it back to Seattle.
Mhm,
Manny is on watch. And there was a really interesting detail. It was super, like, it was a throwaway, but it was like communication. There was a miscommunication. So there's a flaw because they said, "Are we clear to go from 3 to 5 or whatever?" And he was like, "What? You had me watching 6, 4, and 6, or something." So
yeah.
they're a really big organization, but they're
Mhm,
flawed, and they're operating on some procedures that maybe aren't always 100%. But as Ellie and Dina are riding up to Seattle, and they decide it can't be that bad because it's not overrun with infected, or there must not be that many wolves. We see a literal army.
the army.
I mean, they weren't tanks. They were kitted out to be like tanks.
Mhm,
They'd taken things that existed that were left
mhm,
over from the before times and turned them into the military. They were so just like any other of the surviving groups we've seen. They have
mhm.
chosen a form of the culture that was destroyed and recreated it. And so they have gone hyper military. It gave me like chills to see it in the context of what it feels like to be an American right now and what it feels like
Oh
to
my
be
god.
someone with a minoritized identity in America right now. And I can't be the only one that felt that. And that's what I mean by like this show doesn't have to represent me as all the identities I have in order for me to be seeing myself in
Mhm.
it.
Yeah,
Because the show
yeah.
is telling us that's the bad guys.
It also reminds me of things that we talked about in other iterations of this show. Leaders. I am really interested to see how the leadership in this new environment runs compared to Jackson Hole.
Because Abby said, like, I don't recommend you go there, not that you'll get the chance. And there was a reaction in the people who were with her.
Hmm.
Abby does not like she doesn't like Isaac. She doesn't like something about Seattle, the way it's run,
Hmm.
or just there's something wrong with it. And looking at it, that feels pretty apparent. And what are they doing again? What kind of society is this? We didn't see anybody living. All we saw were the troops. Is this what
Yeah.
they do?
Yeah. I don't know. It also, I might have you take this out too, but just this idea of cults in the apocalypse. Like, I don't know. I mean, maybe we join for belonging. Maybe we join for community. But
Who's the cult?
I mean, not cult, but the set, the group of people we saw traveling. But not just thinking about that. I mean, not that I assumed that they were a cult, but then also my mind going back to the guy from episode 8, season 1.
David, yeah.
David, yeah, like just thinking about, and I mean, let's be honest, like being in a community you don't want to be in, but you're still here anyway. I'm thinking about what you were saying about Ellie not liking it there. Well, if you don't like it, why are you still there? Because where am I going to go? Maybe that's another thing we need to explore too. And maybe it's something that will naturally comes up as we learn more about these people.
I think
Like being a part of
belonging,
some, yeah, or survival, belonging and survival.
because we keep going for other people.
Hmm.
And we get to decide who those people are. And maybe we're the only ones who can't. Because if somebody else decides for you, you're not living for them. You're just doing
Mm,
your job. I think that individual identity, group identity, belonging, I think we're being set up to explore all of those things and just how
hmm.
we view others. Going back to Seth and Ellie's speeches during the town hall, Seth was very much like using an appeal to fear. If we don't
Hmm.
punish these people, they're going to come back, or people will find out that we didn't punish them and they're all going to come and get us. They're both using the us versus them appeal.
Hmm.
Ellie, having done a first draft,
Hmm.
was pretty slick, right? She, if you didn't know what she was actually saying, you might have believed her. And I wanted to ask you this, like, how did we know not to believe her?
I think we've traveled with her long
Yeah.
enough. Okay, Ellie.
We already know what her motivations are, but also Bella Ramsey's performance was spot on. All
Hmm.
of those little performance details,
Hmm.
and it was not a physical performance like they were standing still. It was all in the tone of their voice, in
Hmm.
the register that they used. I
Hmm.
was like, how did you do that? I wish could be as good at something as they are at this, like, restrained and refined kind of performance. It was so, so good.
I mean, they crossed their eyes at the beginning, like they're just they're just being like egregious with their talent at
They're
this
just
point.
living
Right.
in 3025. Yeah. I want to ask just a reflection question. Like, how did you feel about this episode? How did it make you feel?
So we talked last week about the moment I was invested in this story again. I
Mhm.
was invested from the very beginning.
It was
I
so good.
think I know, like I think they drew me in, and they drew me in with things that connected me to why I love this story. The watch, the relationship between Tommy and Joel, the relationship between Ellie and Joel. Those were things that I loved about this show. Joel's not there, that relationship still impacts them. I mean, you said it, absent presence. It was so touching to see how people in the town mourned his death. And to think like he was there 5 years and it makes such a big difference like
Yeah.
that means a lot, says a lot. You can see he was well loved.
Mhm.
Just like from when we meet Joel in season 1 to when we meet him for the first time in season 2, he looks different. He looks healthy. He looks healthier. Like he looks different to me. He looks a
Yeah.
little bit more like he's living than he did then even then.
He looks more like oriented to his surroundings.
Mhm.
Like when he makes eye contact with people, you know.
Mhm.
And Maria, at first when we meet them, she's saying like mean shit to him. And he's just engaging back because
Uh-huh.
they're two leaders of a
Mhm.
community and they have things to disagree about. Because what the members of this council have to do.
Mhm.
They
Mhm.
have to represent differing opinions. There's another interesting detail too with Seth being the person that helps them out. Do you think he feels guilty or do they just happen to agree about this?
I felt like there was a level of respect for Joel. Even with the incident between the two of them at the New Year's dance. I would not have expected him to be the one to say something, but the fact that it didn't seem like it was guilt to me. It felt like respect. I don't know. Did you feel like it was guilt?
No,
Mm.
I had that thought and I was like, okay, I have to look at this. I think that it's in line with the same thing that motivated him to say what he said when he was drunk. which is like his particular method of looking out for his community is very superstitious. And it's very like
Oh.
he is thinking about a world that's judging them. And he very
Oh.
much believes that if they don't do this, then it's going to come back on them.
Mm.
For him, he's seeing things in like cosmic scales, like trying to balance the scales and things. And so it did for me come back to something that felt like authentic to the character. And maybe he still actually thinks those things about Ellie, which is a really cool complexity to have in a character.
Yeah.
You think Dina and Ellie are going to get together?
I do.
Oh, yeah.
I do. It's kind of like, okay, I love romance novels. I don't know if we talked about this. I love romance novels. This is a romance trope for forced proximity.
Forced
Um,
proximity. They're
well, what's the one bed? You know, when you have a room but there's only one bed. Uh,
they're on a journey of identity development as well. So, but there's also like there's identity development in the like standard case, the kind that you study, right? Which is
mhm,
just how we come to know ourselves and how we come to like think of ourselves within the larger world. And then there's identity in the terms of cultural identity.
mhm.
So like a queer identity. Is Dina having a coming out story, or maybe not coming out because I don't know that it actually works that way without a society, but apparently homophobia still exists, but
Right. Of all the things we brought with us into the new world.
we sure did.
But you know what? Also, this might be something I have you take out later. But also, isn't that the nature of pansexuality? Not gender being the main thing to determine attraction. You know, so maybe it's more of Dina being attracted to Ellie than this idea of gender.
Yeah, yeah. And so they gave her this extra line that it
Hmm.
doesn't exist in the video game. She says, "I'm not gay," and I was like, "Why are you telling me that? Why is it important for me to know that you think of yourself as someone who is not?"
Okay, so look at this. She said she's not gay. She didn't say I'm not
She didn't
bisexual.
say she was straight.
Right, right.
So she said, "We're not the same." But it doesn't mean because there's more than two options for these
There's more than
things.
two options. There's
Yeah.
more than two options.
There's a scholar I read, God, it's like 15 years ago now, Cherie Eisner, who wrote a book called Bi Notes on a Bisexual Revolution. And she was responding to this criticism that bisexuality is transphobic
Mm.
because it is, I'm attracted to men and women. And she was like, that's not. Like, that's what a binary configuration of gender says to bisexuality.
Yeah.
Bisexuality is I'm attracted to people who are the same as me, and I'm attracted to people who are not like me. And that can be Dina's journey. But yeah, they're exploring this differently than they did in the game. And anytime they do that, as we know, anytime they decide to intentionally do something differently than they did in the game, it's because they have something in mind. They have a particular point to make.
I just looked up the definition of pansexual. And I looked it up because intuitively I know the definition, but I wanted to look at the definition because I just wanted to make sure I didn't misrepresent it.
Yeah.
So pansexuality is defined as an attraction to people of any gender or to people regardless of their gender.
Right, which is two different things. Then
Yeah.
that's cool. It has both of those.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, so maybe that's Dina's journey. Or maybe it's simply that she learned something about herself that she likes Ellie. I'm gonna accept whatever they do with,
Are you
um
is are you doing it, Elianas? Are you
I'm not
really gonna
s-
accept it?
I'm not saying I'm gonna agree with it. I'm saying they have the right to tell this story however they want to because it's
Hmm.
about the character in the world.
Hmm.
Um, and they don't have to tell my story. And this is something that I think we need to really remind ourselves of when we are interrupting is like nobody can tell my story but me.
So I kind of had. Did we explore polyamory in this world at all?
Nothing. So I don't recall any of the things that we would say like we've given it this term because first of all nobody was saying polyamory in 2003 and that's when the world stopped.
Right.
At the time, polyamory would have still been called polygamy, which would have still been just the FDLS. And so it had a very negative connotation.
But there were people having these relationships before we call them polyamorous.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like whether we refer to them as swingers. I mean, and I know that there's a very narrow. No, I know. But you know what I'm saying?
Welcome to
Like,
my world. Trying to always say the right thing. I know what you mean. And yes, just because we didn't have like a mainstream term for that
yeah,
kind of partnership doesn't mean people weren't doing it and
yeah,
doing it
yeah,
in healthy, happy ways.
yes.
I don't know that I can think of an example. We sort of talked a lot about how so many of the families are non-standard or non-nuclear. What do they
Hmm.
still say that?
Well, what do they call them? So this week in my Intro to Family Studies class, we're talking about multi-generational families. Americans are living longer, so we have the young old, middle old, oldest old. At any point in like a middle adult's life, they could be living in the household with the parents and their child.
Mhm.
So looking at multi generational families that way. I think the other term we would use, non nuclear, would be blended families.
Yeah, I think I've heard that. I think we see a lot of those by just nature of how living with this level of hardship and danger um, would work or how that would impact society. Okay, so any predictions for next week? Because we left off with Ellie and Dina
Uh,
sort of half-heartedly convincing themselves that it was Abby and her crew that slaughtered this religious group. I don't think they really believe that. I
I
think they
don't,
just trying to be madder at Abby.
well, I don't know that they're far off though, because I haven't met this, is it Isaac? But I'm not
Mhm.
so sure that he didn't have anything to do with it.
Oh, I think he did. I think the implication is that it was the wolves.
Okay, okay.
And so
Yeah,
that's a good point that Abby and them are still ostensibly wolves.
yeah. Okay, prediction.
Mhm.
Dina finds out Ellie is infected. That's what I think happens next
Yes,
week.
because she pointed her gun
Uh
at
huh.
her. Yeah, she's gonna have to. Because
Yeah.
Ellie's so reckless, she's gonna do something and get herself got and have to explain.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be a trust moment for them.
Yeah.
Trying to think. I think that we're going to see Abby again. I think that we'll get some flashback information on conversations that Joel had with Gail. I think we're
Hmm.
going to hear some more about how they were discussing Ellie. So I think we're going to get, I think it's time for a flashback that gives us some
Hmm.
more information to work with.
I thought you was
Because,
gonna say gives us some more Pedro.
well, yeah, I'm ready for that too. Yeah, I think I'm ready. I'm feeling like, you know, my spirit is calmer. I'm ready to grow with these characters again. This episode felt very like you said, it's time to re-engage. It's time to come back out of
Mm-hmm.
this place that we were. And it happening so early was a very interesting choice.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to work well for a television show.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, we got to deal with this now because there's still story to tell and we have to grow
Mm-hmm.
with these characters. Because I think another thing is that we're going to be dealing with is continuing on this theme of doubling. Because ultimately, Abby and Ellie are foils of one
Mm-hmm.
another.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we're set on the path now. Let's see where it goes.
Craig Mason, if you ever see this, please let us know if somebody makes a trip to the beauty supply store. These questions that
Yeah.
need answers.
Uh, comment below with other questions you have about how the fuck this works. All right. See you next time on We Interrupt This Program.